Welcome to Marlene Wilson's book reveal party for Riding with Hope and Resilience. I know I could be, we could all be out doing other things, but this is a wonderful event I have been looking forward to for many months. I think I remember the very first chat we had, Marlene, was I think it was June or maybe May of 2024. Most of the projects Barbie and I do, we aim for about 10 months. And that would have taken us to about February, I think, if like next month, if if we'd gone our usual leisurely pace of 10 months. So Marlene said, no, I want to have this ready to for the Christmas season of 2024, and so we made a commitment to have the book printed in November, and I think it was uploaded to the printing house by the very last day. I think it was November 30th we were uploading it. You know what I've been making family history movies and books for about 27 years now. It's my personal mission to help those who have lived lives who faced challenges and trauma and impossible situations, and then gone on to live amazing lives, to help them tell those stories. Why? Well, because the next generation is coming down the pike. The small little calves, they're arriving daily. The puppies are I just had my own grandson. I didn't actually have him myself, my daughter did, but he's like 10 months or 10 weeks old right now, and he's like bouncing on my knee and drooling on my shoulder still. But these small children that are coming along are inheriting this planet from us adults. And if you read the news, if you pay any attention to anything, you know that we are leaving them some challenges to sort out, these young whippersnappers. And so I think it behooves us. You notice I'm fitting a few cowboyisms into here. This is one of the other things I loved about this project, Marlene, was figuring out how many cowboy slang phrases I could fit in every sentence. But it behooves us, I think, to be able to pay forward some information, some education, some inspiration that will arm those children so that maybe they can carry on the act of dealing with all these challenges that us as adults are leaving behind. And when Marlene, you started to tell me your story of some of the things you'd been through, your family breaking up when you were a child, losing your dad, all sorts of things. I don't want to get into telling your story because you're going to do that. But I immediately realized I was dealing with somebody who was incredibly strong, who had a very deep connection to something way bigger. And I remember we spent many late nights on Zoom, you and I, working through word by word exactly the words that were going to be in your book. And I mean, and why were we doing that? Well, because you were out riding the range during the day, rounding up those pairs, those mommies and baby cows, and keeping them safe, and from wolves and all sorts of things, fires. And so for me, it was a matter of helping you get to the gold, get to the things in your life that really mattered, got you through those tough moments, the philosophies you have, the way you see the world, Marlene, the way you love, the way you care for other people, the way you care for your animals, the way you care for your dogs and your horses, and then how you stitch it all together into this amazing life. For me to be able to be part of that process of crafting that and being able to to assist you in giving that to the next generation. And so when I found out that you had your two very own great granddaughters who were going to be actually receiving this book, you know, H and P, I won't say their names, but I knew right away who the heck we were working for. This is who we're working for. And so I just want to thank you very much for that privilege of getting to be part of that process. And so everybody, I want to introduce to you Marlene Wilson. If you want to say some words, Marlene, welcome everybody, and then we're gonna do our first reading.
Well, welcome everybody, and thanks for showing up. like, I'm always overwhelmed because, like I said, this is my normal thing that I do. And, but it's been quite a process. I really appreciate Corey putting up with my BS over over the months as I'm still, wait, I don't understand. No, go back, blah, blah. I'm not doing this anymore. Like, whatever, right? Panicking. And then he was so patient with me. Oh, it's okay. Just, you know, we'll figure it out. And sometimes I'd be in tears because of what I was going through when we we're editing some of my stories and making it so it was in a language that anybody can read, not my language. Sometimes my language is over the top or whatever, you know. And Barbie doing the design was just amazing to me, and showing. I sent a bunch of pictures, and she digitized some of them and made it look good, you know. Anyway, and I'm just so grateful that whoever is here listening to this garble that I'm saying. Anyway, I'm just uh, pretty pretty amazed at how, and overwhelmed actually, that it is actually printed and out there. I just can't believe it. And I'm supposed to read this the table of contents here if I can find it in my book here. And okay, here we go. This is a table of contents. The dedication, acknowledgments, and then preface. In chapter 1, early years, and it's got the years in there. Chapter 2, my teenage years. Chapter 3, love and 3 T's. That's about my kids. Chapter 4, the end and the beginning. Chapter 5, grueling motherhood and marriage problems. Chapter 6, shifting gears. Chapter 7, grandma, missionary, and goodbye, Tom. Chapter 8, horses, dogs, and a wedding. Chapter 9, lightning, mud, and chasing bulls. Chapter 10, loss and transformation. Chapter 11, rodeo queens and wedding bells. That's quite a combination. Chapter 12, wildfires, birth, and death. Chapter 13, rescue, home, and induction. Chapter 14, over the rise. And that's the last chapter of my book. And then I'm going to read a little bit out of my book. Where did I say I was starting? Oh, yeah. Let's see, what am I doing here? Okay.
You're going to be in chapter 4.
Yeah, chapter 4, page 76. I was going to start at
The end and a new beginning. So talk about what you said. It's the end and a new beginning, and it's about 1977 to 82. We're talking about what was going on for you before you read, so everybody kind of knows where we're at here.
Okay, thanks, Corey. And it's right at the time where I was able to secure a little house in Salmon Arm right after I started in recovery. And it was kind of quite an amazing time in my life, and it sure changed a whole lot of things. And where I'm going to start reading here is when I would get up at 5 a.m., put some boards on the fence, and start up the chainsaw and cut the ends off. I can't imagine what the neighbors thought. I would go back into the house about 7 a.m. to wake up the kids. They would get ready for school, and I would get ready for work. I was still working at the credit union. Another thing I really appreciate about Jack and our split up was that we never used our kids as weapons against each other. We had shared custody, and we never said bad things to the kids Listen to, see, here I go.
It's okay.
Oh, jeepers creepers.
Marlene, take a sip of water. Take a sip of water.
And we never said bad things to the kids about the other parent. Despite the alcohol, we respected each other. It just worked. Not sure. Oh, goodness. I thought I picked some stuff here to read where I wouldn't cry.
Tell me what page you're on.
On page 76.
76.
Sure how we knew to do this, except we both really loved our kids. Jack was in a relationship with Helen, and from that union, my kids have a half sister, Tabitha. To this day, Jack and Tamara have a great relationship, and they keep in contact regularly. One thing about it, all you guys that are listening to this, you know me, so this is just me, right? One warming, faith-building experience I had was when I went to get lumber for the fences, because we have some horses, of course. Jack Brooks, the owner of Brooks Cedar Mill, offered the lumber cheap. Jack Brooks from the lumber place was a hardworking lumber mill operator in overalls and gumboots, about my mom's age. After talking with him, he decided to give me an amazing price for the fence lumber I needed. I need a Kleenex here. After I went up with a big low bed truck driven by my friend Larry F. to haul a small bit of lumber I needed, Jack said he would haul it in his pickup. When he arrived with the lumber, I didn't have all the money, so I gave him a check for part of the payment. On his way to work every morning, he would see me out there determinedly working on the fence. One day he stopped right in front of me, tore up my check, which he still had in his overalls. I could not imagine what he was doing. Then he said he had not seen anyone working that hard for a long time, and that he wanted to donate the lumber for the fence. I believe that Jack Brooks' generosity was God's way of encouraging me and helping me to trust God more. Later that year, I was hitchhiking to work because I couldn't afford insurance on the car. Jack Brooks could see the car wasn't moving, so he guessed what the problem was. He stopped and handed me a check to pay for the insurance. When I tried to turn it down, he said he didn't feel like he had done anything for anyone in a long time. He just wanted to help out the kids and me. I cried, of course. We so appreciated that kind man's act of kindness. Christmas that year was funny because Tracy and I, just not going to get the tears out of my eyes, had taken a handsaw and cut down a fir tree that was growing on our own property. Because I couldn't figure out how to stand it up, I nailed the sucker to the floor using 6-inch spiral spikes. It stood there for a long time. All 3 of the kids and I were there for Christmas that year. It turned into a Charlie Brown tree, small, sparse, and sparse of needles, and a little bent with an ornament almost tipping it over. One day there was a very heavy snowfall. Tracy was doing her homework, sitting at the table in our little house in Salmon Arm. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. When I opened the door, standing there was a short little man. in an overcoat and a fur cap with a couple of shopping bags hooked through his arms. He seemed like he was cold and homeless. He asked if he could use the washroom. After a moment, not really knowing what to say, I finally said yes. Even though we were tempted to be afraid or suspicious, we chose to be generous and let the man in. He was in the washroom for a very long while. Tracy and I were wondering what he was doing in there for so long. We looked at each other in silence and kind of shrugged. When the man came out, I asked him if he was hungry and if he wanted some beef stew, which I had made fresh that day on the wood stove. He declined and went out into the snowy night. We both had such a strange feeling about him, so within a minute, we ran to the door and looked outside to see which way he had gone. Peering into the dark night, there was no tracks visible at all, like he had just vanished into the thin air. Both of us stepped right outside to have a closer look, but nope, no footprints in the snow. I told this tale to a group of friends, and one person said that it was such a wonderful Christmas story, it made them cry. I knew I hadn't imagined the short little man, but to this day, I wonder if God sent him to see if he could trust, if we could trust and have faith in order to help someone else. In January 1981, while we were building fences and putting a new floor in the house, a disc in my back got ruptured. I suffered for a long time. The last straw came when the doctor telling me that I would have to have back surgery or be in a wheelchair. The odds were against me. The doc said even with surgery, I only had a 40% chance of walking. But if I didn't have it, I would not walk, period. Scary decision. I had been clean and sober then for about a year and a half, and I was only 35 years old and felt like I had already gone through the mill. Tracy and Tamara stayed at the house and got themselves off to school and kept the wood stove going. We could not have the place freeze up. The girls were 13 and 14 years old. Whew. What wonderful, responsible daughters they were. Whew. As I was recouping from back surgery, I worked for Dave Harrington, who was restoring an old biplane, and had two wings covered in gray fabric. He called me Rosie the Riveter, just like the heroic women in World War II who had taken heavy labor jobs in construction, lumber, and steel mills, as well as unloading freight, building airplanes, manufacturing munitions, and much more. He needed me to grind off the thousands of old rivet heads on the wings. I spent many hours hunched over, wearing safety goggles with an electric grinder in my hands, throwing up bright orange sparks. Dave was another angel. He'd show up at the house with a box of groceries for us. After he would leave, I would find $20 bills somewhere in my pocket or on the table, bless his heart. One of my most primal fears is the fear of heights. Dave suggested I start taking flying lessons to get over that fear and to prove to myself that I can do whatever I say I am going to do. I took my flight lessons in a Cessna 150 tail dragger tricycle. A plane like that has three landing gear wheels, but when it is on the ground, the front window points up at the sky, not down towards the runway in front. I had to learn to take off and land by looking out the side window of the plane. It was challenging to keep the plane going straight along the runway. On the first solo flight, I was concentrating so hard that I did my takeoff and landing perfectly. Actually, it was the only one I ever did perfectly. Later, Dave would fly to Vernon in a Piper 33 Cup to pick up parts and would take me with him, and I would fly the plane. I finally stopped flying because it was expensive, and I had started into my career of cowboying. So that's all I'll read about that right now.
Thank you, Marlene.
Mop my face.
Yeah, yeah. It's cathartic, isn't it, to tell your own story?
Yeah, it's yeah.
The cleansing tears, huh? Like they kind of move things, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
yeah, that was quite the start of a brand new life up there in Salmon Arm, that's for sure.
Yeah. So the process, Marlene, you had gone through is you had because you're a working cowboy and you're working with ranch owners. Every was it every week or two you'd have to give them your bill, basically your list of hours that they were going to then write out a check to you for, right? And you told me the story that sometimes they'd look at this, go, huh? And it was almost like they were telling you, cowboys don't really work that hard, and you must have been just snoozing under a tree all day. So you started keeping very detailed notes, right? You had
That's right. Yeah.
say more about that.
Yeah, I know that Rob will know who I'm talking about for sure. But when I was up Trinity Valley, I'd go to, my bosses and with my hours and all that kind of thing of work, and the older fellow would say, "Are you sure you're working? What are you doing up there?" And so that encouraged me to keep a journal for sure. So then the next time I went and he went through the same song and dance, I said, "Well, do you want to read my journal and see what I did? How many cows I saw on certain days and where they were?" And he said, "No, it's okay. I just wrote out my check after that." So, so yeah. So to break in, though, I had to work for, in my contract and cowboy business, some of the maybe more difficult ranchers to work for, because first of all, I was a female and they weren't sure that I could do the job that they wanted me to do. And but I I'm fairly stubborn, or whatever you want to call it, determined. And yeah, I hung in there until um, I was accepted into that field of work. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the reason I had you tell that story was that a lot of the folks that we deal with here at Family Movie Storybooks, they have a strong urge to leave something meaningful for the next generation, a book, or not even the next generation, for you today here, and but they always say, well, I don't really know what I would say, or I can't remember my own story, or I've forgotten most of my life. And so, Marlene, you were really lucky that you had these notes. You and some friends sort of transcribed those all into kind of a running manuscript of sorts. And then you and I spent many, many hours working through that to try to hone it down into sort of smooth prose, figuring out the who, the what, the when, the where of a story. Family stories, human stories, autobiography stories. They all have kind of a formula in the sense that when we put together a family book, there's some components that sort of have to go together. There's got to be something going on. There needs to be facts and figures, not necessarily by themselves or an interesting story, but when you map that up with some of the drama that goes on in people's lives, now we're talking. I mean, if you've ever watched any sitcoms or your TV shows or a movie, you get the point. Is that there's got to be something happening in there. And Marlene, your life there was no shortage of things happening in your life, and so the process we went through was to pull all those out, figure out all the happenings, the who, what, the when, the where, maybe the why, and then I actually spent a lot of time asking you how you felt about things. You didn't like it, I think, at first, but we shed some tears together even in that process. And what it did was it actually made the stories relevant. Why did this matter so much? Because some of the pain, in my judgment, that you were carrying and had been healing and processing, and then moving beyond, the knowledge of life that you'd learned and the philosophies and the tools, they became almost like superpowers for you. So we had to get to the pain in order to make the tools valid and useful. So I really appreciated that. And then Barbie comes along, and we asked you to sort of work on sending us some imagery. Barbie, do you want to share a little bit about sort of what that process was like? What was the process we went through to get that imagery and then put it in the book?
Sure, sure. I just want to take a little pause just to ask Ron about his burning question. Ron, would you like to ask your question?
That's Rob.
Oh, Rob, sorry.
That's all right. I'll answer
Sorry.
anything. So just to kind of verify or validate Marlene's story, sometimes when they say somebody's a cowboy or cowboying for a ranch, it's not cows standing in a corral and feeding them hay, but it's in British Columbia, it's pretty wide open spaces. I met Marlene as the range officer. Actually, I don't think I was a range officer at that time. I was a range agrologist, what they call it. It was a kind of an underling that managed the range with people like Marlene. And I heard that there was this girl that was going to be managing this rancher's range, and the range areas are fairly extensive. This one is a very in the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia. There's a lot of recreational activities on Crown land. What we call Crown land is public lands, and generally there's a forestry activity, range activity, recreation, community watersheds, and various other integrated resource use on the land. And this lady, Marlene, I don't think I even knew her name. I was just told by the rancher that she's out there somewhere. Go give her a map or something and tell her what she needs to do. And I thought, okay, I'll go out and do this. So I met Marlene at this place that the rancher called Rat Camp. It gives you a picture of what the place looked like. And Marlene was there with her trailer, horses, and dogs. And I thought, well, this is interesting. And at that year, the rancher was expanding, and so he hired Marlene to run two ranges. She talked about Trinity Range. There was also another very large range on a plateau between a couple of valleys, the Okanagan Valley and the Kettle Valley, which is about 70 miles. So if you picture 70 miles by about 70 miles where cattle can roam freely, not a lot of fences or cattle guards. And so Marlene was out there and she was learning the range. And one of the things that and Marlene and I became friends. I don't know how many years ago that was, Marlene, but here was a lady that cowboyed up in the Chilcotin area of British Columbia, is up near the Fraser River, everything west of the Fraser. Very wild country. It's still the Wild West. You cross the Fraser River and you lose your cell phone. And most people aren't comfortable with that, but Marlene was perfectly comfortable. She worked for some big ranches there. She moved down to the Okanagan is when I met her. And so my what I would call Marlene is that she may be not the best roper in the world, but she is absolutely consistent. And when you have somebody managing your business, and your business is cows, you want somebody that is reliable, consistent, is going to be working every day. And something I was always, working in the range program. I'm retired now. I'm still working in the sector, but I'm not doing that. But it was very important for me as a range manager to know that the work going on was going to be done in a manner that protects the resource, and it's not just a bunch of token words. So Marlene speaks from experience, and everybody online probably knows Marlene, a little bit of tidbits of her, but I knew Marlene the cowboy, and I'm still amazed that she's still cowboying up in the Caribou. And we bump into each other every once in a while. And so, Marlene, I'm happy to see your experiences are in a book. And I don't think a book can contain your life. I think it's probably just a little snippet of who you really are.
Thank you so much.
Rob, that was awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of what it takes to put together a book. And Corey has mentioned to you a little bit of the commitment that it takes to work with those words, those memories, those stories, how to weave this tapestry of moments together, so that first of all, that the story is unique, that the reader is intrigued and interested, but then it comes to bringing in both the words and the imagery and the maps and all sorts of things. Now, in this new digital world that we're in, a book designer like myself has wonderful tools at my disposal, and it's just as interesting as putting together a painting for me, or a tapestry of someone's life. Like, I look behind Rob over his shoulder, and I see this wonderful vignette of colors and shapes and stories. I'm sure that piece has a wonderful story just in itself of how you acquired it, and has a history behind it, much like the books above your right shoulder. Those two, and the little mementos that are sitting on the wall. Those together, once we leave this earth together, that simple tapestry of shapes and stories that are sitting behind all of you. Like when I look at Sandy in her home, there is something interesting on the wall. When we leave this earth, it is those rich stories and those experiences that nourish our generations to come. And sometimes we think, well, but my story's not that interesting. I'm just a simple person. On the contrary, I have done many, many book projects, both in my previous life before I met my wonderful Corey, my partner in crime, and together we have also met incredible people, and spending time with Marlene has enriched both of our lives enormously. And I know that this story is going to be able to be passed down through the generations for 200, 300, 400 years to come. Yes, the digital world, all the things that are on the internet and in the cloud and whatever. But when you sit holding a book, of the things that you've learned, the experiences that you've had, the adversity that you've come through. It is those treasures that inspire the generations, not only your children, your cousins, your aunts, your family. I want to share with you also that during COVID, I did my family's book. Like, the shoemaker's children never have shoes. And during the time when we were all sitting at home, nowhere to go, nobody to go and visit, no shopping to be done, I connected with a cousin of mine in Chicago. And the two of us decided that we were going to corral my my maternal side of my family. And in the end, we created, as Corey is showing you now on the screen, we created a 412-page, that's me, a 412-page book, which weighs 6.5 pounds. I'm not suggesting anybody does that, but the joy that we had in corralling 188 people on 10 continents. Here I am meeting some of them for the very first time. I cannot tell you how it has changed me fundamentally. I will never be the same person. And subsequent to publishing my family book, I have gone to Australia and New Zealand and have met many of the people whose stories we wove into our family book. And I have inspired, this is the part 2 of one of the family members. This is a book that has just been published. Corey and I are so excited. You'll be seeing some of the results of this book, and it is called Tapestry. And this is the back. It is, I think it's over 200. It's 250 pages. And so this is my cousin, who I've now gotten very, very close to. She lives in Chicago, as I said, and all our family now have a route to connect with each other. So how does a book get created from the creative side? So it is the text, it's the story, and if you're not a writer, if you don't think that you are a writer, Corey has a way of, I'm sure that Marlene can attest to, of helping you to bring the story to fruition. That works alongside supplying me with the parts, and I always call it the sexy stuff. So of the images, of the maps, of the mementos, of the pieces of the family, I'm just looking to show you the family, the carpets, show you one over here. I'll just find it if you just bear with me. The pieces that you most probably don't need to keep in a family, but to show that they were once in your family history. So the pictures get to me either physically. So Marlene, living up north, simply put a bunch of photos together, mailed them to me. This was before Canada Post went on strike, mind you. And I photographed all of them, worked with them. Some of them weren't marvelous resolution, but with modern technology, we're able to bring pictures back to life. So you'll see that there is a picture, and like on this page, the original supplied weren't, they were a little faded, a little out of focus, but we are able to bring them back. So that's briefly the process of getting the digital images. Does anybody have any questions or just curious about something that I have mentioned? And you can put your hand up or take your sound off.
For
Nobody?
for a lot of folks, the question becomes, well, how do you figure out how many photos, how many pages, all that kind of stuff? The way we kind of work it out is we've kind of got three kind of packages we work with. We interview somebody who has no text written, no nothing. We actually can generate about 12,000 words, which can actually populate somewhere between about 50 to 60 pages. You map that up with about 100 photos. You've got an amazing book. Two-hour interviews, we can actually put together about 20,000 words, believe it or not, and then create a book that's got up to about 140 pages. You map that up with up to about 300 photos. You've got what we call our family heritage book. Then the top one is called the ancestral epic book, and that's like about 6 hours of interviews. That's not doing any writing yourself. That's us listening, transcribing, editing, writing, and then laying out about 250 pages along with about 600 photos. You got a really beautiful designed book. Most people tell us they're not really writers. They want to be. I mean, everybody wants to be a writer, but to be a writer, it takes a lot of focus and dedication. And as Marlene knows, it takes a lot of showing up, right?
So a question for Cole or Corey or Barbie.
Yeah.
If somebody has my wife did some considerable work on my paternal genealogy, and it's not in a bound book. Is there a package with respect to taking something that's almost complete and making it into a book?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. That, I mean, when you have done all that research, you are quite a far ways into us working with you. It is,
Right. Okay.
yeah. We've done many books. In fact, this book was all supplied copy,
Okay.
most of it, and then it was proofread because we have our name behind it. So
Yeah.
all, we try, there's consistencies that you keep. There are tenses and spellings and the way that you work with numerals. And it's just like proofreading knowledge that just as a lay writer, you might not be in that world. But for us to work the project together for you, this is where our great love is. And we bring our expertise to the table and we advise you, as best we can. And then if you want to go so far as to publish it or make it available just to your family, Marlene is now, a pretty adept at the fact that her book is now published. It is online, and she may be selling physical copies because she's just having so much fun. I just wish I was up there doing it. But meeting people and doing books, she's doing book signings, our Marlene,
Yeah.
So,
If
but
you've got an idea about a book for yourselves, you can set up a free consultation with us. We'll get together with you on Zoom here and just chew it through with you to see what the possibilities are. We do have packages, but honestly, most of what we do is we'll issue a custom quote for you based on the services you actually need, and not trying to sell you stuff you don't need. So
yeah,
Right.
we have to start somewhere because a book is how long is a piece of string. So we just kind of give you a general idea of what's involved. But what I can tell you, it is a lot of fun. And to see the history and the stories coming to fruition and holding them in your hand. Marlene is not the first crybaby that we've ever sat in front of. She ain't. Corey, and I say that with the greatest of respect. Corey and I were in North Vancouver, British Columbia last week, and the woman that has just had her book published, yeah, she's like a lady. She's pretty confident and sassy with herself and knows her stuff. Well, we had a crybaby because the minute she had her grandchildren around her, and they had not any knowledge of this book that she had done of her family. They had no knowledge. And she stood there in front of our cameras with Corey interviewing her. The Kleenex were coming through the door. It was just
That's pretty.
crazy. Hey, Cor?
Yeah.
It was just, I nearly lost it. I really did, because I didn't expect her to, and she's having a book reveal party. I think it's next week or the week after. I really invite you all to come and listen to Evelyn Amar's story. She was at the last one. You remember, Marlene?
Yes,
She
I
was
do.
here. Well, her book is now finished. Her grandchildren have them. At that book reveal, when she gave the books to her children and her grandchildren, her son, what did he do, Corey? He just disappeared.
Yeah.
He sat on the couch. We heard nothing from him. He had the book, and
he was in the book.
Completely engrossed.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest prize of all, right?
Yeah. So speaking of books worth reading, let's hand this back to Marlene. And you've got another section you want to read to us, right? This is
Sandy has a question.
a what?
Sandy has a question.
Okay.
I do have a question. I'm writing my own book as well. Marlene is my cousin, so we understand the lives that we went through. And some things that concern me is like for my own, not for anybody else, just my own. Do I really want to let someone's family secrets out? You know, like I got things that, boy, you know, the cat knows everything, right? There's the cat.
There's the cat.
Yeah. That's a good point, Sandy. Is and Marlene and I painstakingly, almost every paragraph, I'd say to her, "Is this something you want public?" And especially there was sections in the book that she was respectfully trying to honor them by including them because they had impacted her positively. And I said to her, "Are you sure that they're going to be okay with you honoring them publicly?" So it's a very good consideration, Sandy, is what do you include and what don't you include? And it's really worth agonizing over. And I always tell folks this: you're not going to please anybody. There's always going to be somebody call you up to complain, right? That's human nature. So don't do it for them. But if you come at it with the intention of trying to honor them as best as you can. I don't make books where we include negative things about people. Hire somebody else if you want to do that. That's not what we do here. We honor people and we celebrate them. So speaking of Marlene, do you want to take us into? I think we're going into chapter number 10, right? No, sorry, I'm lying. Page 99. It's the end of chapter 5. This is your daughter Tamara had just had a serious accident. She was injured in a car accident, right? And had been in the hospital, and you'd been there with her the whole time.
Yeah.
Put your whole life on hold. Meanwhile, you're dealing with your own medical issues, right?
Yeah, and it was. People can read about that when they get the book, because I can't do that here, or I'll be like in a heap on the floor. But anyway, it was all about that, and then I had injured my knee by playing ball, right? And so I had to go to Kamloops for my knee reconstruction. And they had to reconstruct my whole knee. Peter stayed at Pritchard with my longtime friends, Don and Carol Swift, while I was in hospital. They are on here listening to this, so I better smarten up here and do it right? Don and I have been friends since we were 16 years old. So anyway, we went back to Tatlico after a few days. This is after my surgery. Several weeks later, I had to go back to Kamloops again because I had gotten an infection in the surgical incision in my knee, and the doctors had to operate again. Tamara was released from hospital, and she, along with 2 other quadriplegics, bought a house in Vancouver to live in together. At Christmas, Tom, Tamara's brother, brought Tamara up from Vancouver. It was so great having them there. Tom pushed Tamara in her wheelchair through the snow to go visit the horses. They kept getting stuck, which they found hilarious, and they were both laughing like crazy. In my incision still was not healing, and on January the 2nd, 1989, I had developed a lump on the outside of my leg, just above the knee. When I called Dr. Sunby, the surgeon in Kamloops Hospital, he told me to come down right away, so I headed out by myself in the truck, and Peter stayed in Tatlaco to work for Satyrs. I felt hurt because Peter wouldn't come with me on this 7-hour drive, and I was in a lot of pain. It was my right knee, and it hurt all the more from keeping my right foot on the gas pedal the whole way. The roads were icy and snowy around 100 Mile House, making my progress slow as I arrived in Kamloops very late that day. When the doctor saw the leg, he admitted me into hospital right away. He was surprised when I asked, what should I do with my truck? The doctor couldn't believe that I had driven all the way there by myself. He muttered, there sure are some tough women in this world. Don Swift came from Pritchard and parked the truck for me. This trip to the hospital started a long, drawn-out process. They did tests and found I had developed a serious staph infection in the bone above the knee. At the time, the doctor talked about maybe having to take my leg off above the knee if they couldn't get the infection under control. Because of the type of infection, I needed another surgery to scrape the bone. They had to fly antibiotics in from Vancouver. I had 3 different types of antibiotics intravenously, alternately every 2 hours. I ended up being in the hospital for 6 weeks. My mom and my sister were only 50 miles away in Falkland, and for some reason, they never came to visit me. Thank goodness for Don's wife, Carol, who is also listening to this, who was my only regular visitor while I was in the hospital. Peter never did come to see me in the hospital. I knew something was very wrong. He had always been so attentive before. I was feeling lonely, scared, and abandoned. I refused to let myself cry even once. It felt like if I started to cry, I would never stop. To keep my mind off me and my worries, I dragged my intravenous pole on my crutch and go to the hospital rooms and visit bedridden patients, and I'd get them coffee and snacks. They were very appreciative. I felt a sense of purpose and value being able to help others, and it worked like a charm. I felt less miserable too. Tamara was in Vancouver at GF Strong Rehab, and I was in Kamloops Hospital. I later found out that Peter had started an affair in Tatlaco. What a horrible time. When I got out of the hospital and went back to Tatlaco, Peter had moved out of the trailer and was staying at Satyrs. I felt so alone and heartbroken. But on crutches, I attempted to carry on. Yeah. Once I could walk without crutches, I got a job driving a dump truck for Fred Brink up by Anaheim Lake. It was a good job. At least I was making money to pay the bills, like the mortgage on our property. I stayed at Nimple Lake Resort with Mary Kerner. She was a kind, caring soul who helped me so much. Then I started driving Fred's dump truck hauling gravel at Tatla Lake, where he had contracted with Carrier Lumber. One day when I was having issues with Fred's truck, the distributor cap kept falling off, so I had to use some rebar tying wire to secure it. Rolly, the foreman of Carrier Lumber, stopped and asked me how secure my job was, I told him it was iffy. If the truck runs, I work. He then asked if I'd like to work for them, building roads for their logging operation. I started with carrier lumber the next week. Another God shot. I had a great opportunity to learn to operate a grader, a loader, a rock truck, and a Caterpillar D8 bulldozer. I think I'll just leave it at that for that part.
Thank you.
That was quite a time in my life, and the miracle of all that was I never had to resort back to my addictive lifestyle, and it must have been a God thing. It had to be, because I'm not that strong, as of myself. I'm just not, and perhaps the good Lord, as I understand God, and you know that my God rides a horse, right? You guys, you understand that, right? And he's always riding with me, and he has to. But I have that belief now that I never had before. And I think the more things that happen, at least this is my experience in my life, the stronger my faith has got towards God. And I think that seems backwards from lots of stories I've heard. But I'm just so grateful it's worked that way for me. Yeah, I'm so blessed. And for you guys to even listen to me do this stuff on Zoom, which I know nothing about, that's a miracle. That's a God thing right there. Yeah. Anyway, and it's so nice to see all of you guys here. Oh my.
Marlene, I like the way you say, and I have trouble with the pronunciation. I call it Tatlieko. Say it the way you say it.
Tatlico.
Tatlico, yeah. So for those of you that don't know Tatlico, it's the land of strong women. Who was Jerry Bracewell? She was, my understanding is she was adopted into a family up there, and she was the first woman guide outfitter in British Columbia, and I think probably in Canada, and so the land in Tatlico is not for the faint of heart, and but beautiful country.
And the family that adopted her was my family.
Is that right, eh? The Bracewells?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know the names. And that's the unfortunate thing about life, is it goes too quickly and you want to meet everyone.
Mm.
And I had the good fortune of meeting Marlene, and so 6 degrees of separation with the cowboy world.
Yeah.
Rob, I am just loving hearing you augmenting Marlene's stories and adding another dimension to her stories. It feels like there's a series of to bring the whole of your area of the world and capture all these beautiful stories, because the strength and the tenacity of the people are the leaders, and the gumption that the new generations are so needing to hear from.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I've had the good fortune of working, and I continue to work with the ranching sector of British Columbia, and I don't think there's a more independent. You're not a rancher if you're not independent, but if you're independent, it also it sort of determines a lot of things. So you have to be independent to be a rancher and to be a cowboy for some of these outfits. If you go to the gang ranch, for example, like right now, I mean, I'll go off on some cow trail. But lead me back, Marlene, if I go too far. But the gang ranch of British Columbia is owned by the Douglas Lake Cattle Company. The Douglas Lake Cattle Company is the biggest ranch in Canada and probably number 4 in North America. They have about 50,000 mother cows, and if you travel in the Fraser Valley, it's I would call it ruggedly beautiful.
Mhm.
When you travel on some of the roads, you fear that you're looking too much into the Fraser. Have you ever? It's like walking on a tightrope and being drawn into the river.
Yes.
So you have to be careful when you're in that country because it has that appeal. But the cowboys that work there, the cowboys, and cowboy is not uh, it's not a noun. It's actually, well, it's a noun and a verb. When we refer to a cowboy, it's gender neutral.
Yeah.
And so a gal like Marlene, you have to be always have your wits about you.
Mhm.
There's cats, there's bears, there's rugged country. You never know what's around the next corner. And that's something I've really admired about Marlene, just knowing that piece of her. Like I've known little tidbits of her story. And one of the things that I and her share in common is that we have an equal faith in God, our Father.
Mhm.
And it seems to me that if we don't, if you don't have that faith, you're missing something beautiful in life because it just causes your being to be completely fulfilled.
Mhm.
When I think of, Marlene says, "My God rides a horse." He rides a horse because she rides a horse.
Mhm.
He also rides a motorcycle and a skateboard.
And it's the generations, hear me, it's the generations that are coming up that really are longing to hear your voices. I can attest to that. I'm going to share something that I didn't think that I was going to share today, but I was at a how can I put it, just to be succinct? I was at a massive convention in California during October of 2024, and it was like girl stuff. It's a clothing company that has a number of suppliers in the United States. I mean, 4,000 women working for this company. Plus, they've come into Canada, right? So I'm a Canadian. I'm down there in California, and I'm sitting there meeting some of my Canadian sisters who are also selling the clothing. And in front of me are sitting 5 women from Saskatchewan who are at the top of their pops selling clothing. And they say to me, "Well, what do you do in your day jobs?" I say, "Well, I'm a book designer and I'm working on this magnificent project with this fabulous cowboy out of northern British Columbia." The one girl jumps up. She says, she's like 25 years old. She says, "I'm a cowboy too. I want to know this woman, Marlene Wilson. I need to hear from her." I said, "Well, I'm going to send you the link, and you're going to be getting so many fantastic life's lessons from learning about Marlene." She sits there for a while. She comes to me like 10 minutes later. She says, "You know what? I have heard about Marlene Wilson. I have heard about this woman who rides the ranges and who reaches out and who is a mentor to people. I have heard about her on the cowboy talking, whatever you guys talk on, what would you call it? Give me a good name, give me a good word. The cowboy hotline or whatever you want to call it. Those women who are coming up through the ranks, the young guys who are doing the work, they want to hear from all of you. I'm telling you, it is beholden unto you, I think, to tell these wonderful stories. Don't you think, Corey?
Yeah.
It just seems like the way that Rob is also augmenting Marlene's stories. Look at this beautiful article that was written by the local newspaper,
At a
right?
Mile House, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, and I think that everybody has a story. I think it's, Marlene, your story is so unique because you're kind of, you know, a successful woman in a male-dominated industry, pretty much, and it's not a traditional, at least from a city slicker's point of view, it's not a traditional kind of thing from my point of view. But everyone has something unique about ourselves, and so I think if people are saying, well, I would never do my family book or a book about myself because I'm boring or there's nothing going on, I don't really buy into that. I think it's just a matter of taking some time to really sift through all the challenges and trials and tribulations you've been through, to find out that there's actually some really powerful lessons and experiences in there. I've just put a link in the chat field, actually several of them here. I want to give you guys some parting gifts on the way out. One thing is the very top of that heap is the link to buy your copy of Riding with Hope and Resilience. Now, if you've already got your copy, and you keep it handy and you're still working your way through it, yay for you, good work. But there's Christmas 2025 is rapidly approaching already. So who do you know who you might want to send the link to, or go over to the link, buy a copy, and have it shipped to them? Could be for a birthday, Valentine's Day, whatever, because they're not going to hear about it unless you share it. You can actually share that link. Go onto Facebook. You could post that link onto Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest or wherever you do your shouting from the rooftops. Not only will it help Marlene, it'll also help the people who will be inspired by it. Because you've been here today and you've gone on this journey with us, me and Barbie would like to offer you a 10% off discount should you decide you wanted to work with us to produce your own family book, publish it, and get it out there into the world. And the other thing we do is all of our projects, we typically schedule for about 10 months from start to finish. It's about an average turnaround time, unless you're a racehorse driver like Marlene, is a little faster. And we also have a payment plan. So we structure it so the total cost is broken up into 10 equal monthly payments. So it's a little more easy to go, all handled automatically online for us. The last thing I want to say is there's a thing in that Zoom chat list there called the Life Story Questionnaire. And what's that's useful for is if you're trying to think about your own life and think, well, I don't really have much to say, download the questionnaire and start to fill it out. If you never get around to making a book or a movie about your family history or about your own life, when inevitably all of us will shuffle off to our next great rodeo, the stuff that you put on that form, your next of kin will be thrilled about. They won't be rushing around, all in an emotional, freaked out state, trying to remember details about you. Why? Because you will have already written down on the Life Story Questionnaire. They will be thrilled. Do them that favor. We've also got some tips for how to start working on your photo collection and organize it. And then there's a link in there that you can set up a free workshop with us at there's the Life Story Questionnaire, and there's that free coupon, event 10. Barbie was mentioning we're doing another book reveal party coming up with this one is called Living a Life That Matters, featuring Evelyn Amar, who is the author of this. I'll just give you a spoiler. Her father was a serviceman in World War II, and I have covered in books and movies, I think about 12 or 13 different soldiers, gone through their military records, found the medals, found the battle diaries, and honored them by telling their story. But this man, her father, everybody else pales in comparison. I've never met a man like this. He was in literally probably 7 or 8 very significant turning point battles in World War II, and it boggles the mind. It's almost beyond what's possible for any single human being. So I can't wait to take you into that story a little bit about who he was and what he went through, and that's coming up. And so thank you very, very much for being with us here today. And we're going to hang around, Barbie and me and Marlene, for a few more minutes if you want to chat or ask questions and talk about what you're working on. And we'll be here, and thank you very, very much.
Thanks a lot for you guys showing up